All right, let's take a look at another sign here. And I want to start off by describing the setting in which you might see this sign. I don't do this all the time, but I think understanding this before we go in will actually help you sort of decipher the words in this sign. You would see this if you were driving in a car. You would see this on the road just as you're entering an apartment complex. And when I say apartment complex, I don't mean one building. I don't just mean one building that might have a bunch of units in it. What I mean when I say apartment complex is a big piece of land that has many different buildings on it. And that's when I guess in English you would call that an apartment complex. And obviously each building would have a ton of units in it. But this is what they call in Korean, they call this a danji. So when I'm talking about an apartment complex, I'm not talking about just one building. I'm talking about this 아파트 단지, which is referring to this multiple buildings in one particular thing. So you're driving up into sort of the entrance of this complex, and you would see this sign maybe sitting right here. The other thing I want to point out is I have a fan that commented on one of my YouTube videos before this and said, wow, I didn't realize signs in Korean would be made mostly up of nouns. And that's true. If you look at this, and practically everything in this sign is a noun. The only two things that aren't nouns is this syllable here, and that this is just a particle that's added to indicate that this is the thing before is the subject. And this is sort of a half noun. It is a noun, but it only acts as a noun if something is placed before it. You actually couldn't use ne on its own, but you could use ne after a noun, and it actually sort of becomes a noun. One of the reasons why they are all nouns is that they're not just any nouns. If you look at this, and maybe you can recognize this, but maybe you can't, all of these things, except for this, but literally everything on this sign except for this, is actually based off of a Hanja character. And one of the reasons why that's important is you can sort of say a lot and get a lot of meaning out of just one little character, because each character sort of has a meaning on its own, and you don't really need a full word or a full sentence to describe a meaning. Each one of these syllables, or each one of these things that are based on a Hanja character, has a lot of meaning on its own. And because of that, on signs, you want to be sort of straight and to the point, and Hanja characters sort of allow you to do that in Korean. Now, let's break through this sign. Again, as I said before, this tanji here, this refers to the apartment complex. So apartment complex. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but I guess I'll write it for you. The word for apartment in Korean is actually sort of a Konglish word. It's 아파트. And if you were going to say apartment complex, you would say 아파트 단지. Ne, as I said before, this is actually not a noun, but if you put a noun before it like this, or something before it, you can, so it has meaning as a noun. And ne, actually, the Hanja character for this looks like this. You've seen this before in one of my other sign videos. And this means inside. Inside. I'm going to sort of show you, as I said before, this sign is made up of entirely Hanja characters. I'm not going to show you the Hanja characters for all of them because some of them are more complex than others, but ne is a very common character in Korean, and the Hanja is sort of one that I feel any Korean person would recognize this as being ne, and as I said, it means inside. Saw means slowly or slow, and hang, I've actually shown you this Hanja character. Saw is kind of a difficult Hanja character, so I won't show it to you, but hang is a very common one that you see all the time. And as I said, you've seen it actually in a previous sign video. It looks something like this. And this refers to sort of going or moving or something like that. And if you can imagine this sawhang hada, is the verb for to go slow. And sawhang is the noun form of that, which I guess would be going slow. So right here what I have is inside the apartment complex, or inside the complex, go slow. This next line here, 방문, that means to visit, or 방문하다 means to visit. The verb form means to visit, but this just means visiting, the noun form of to visit, which would be visiting. Now, 차, this refers to cars on its own, but 차량, this sort of refers to any, not just car, but sort of any vehicle. So 차량 would be vehicle. And right away you can sort of see where this is going. We're saying, okay, we'll go slow in the apartment complex, and then This un here is going to indicate that this is the subject of the sentence, and these visiting vehicles will have to do something. And this thing here is going to tell me what these visiting vehicles will have to do. This word here, 경비, 경비 hada means to protect or to guard or something like that. And 실 means room. So a 경비실 is sort of like the protect or guard room. In these complexes, if you ever go to one of these 아파트 단지s in Korean, you'll actually see that there's sort of like these little huts outside. And inside these little huts, they don't necessarily need to be men, but they usually are sort of older men that sort of hang out in these huts all day and all night. And obviously it's not the same person that stays in there all day and all night. But you'll have people that are basically the guards of the entire apartment complex. They're not really sort of guards that you see in, I'm Canadian, but they're not really guards that you would see in Canada or America or, and I guess other places of the world. Korea is actually very, very safe. And you don't really need these guards really for safety because there's almost no crime in Korea. But these guys are sort of just making sure that, the maintenance of the whole place is okay, and then any mail that comes through, maybe if you're not home, they can pick up the mail. So they are called, they are actually usually called 경비 아저씨. And I guess you would sort of translate to like sort of a guard man, and ajashi sort of refers to an older man who's not a family member, and this 경비 again sort of refers to protect or to guard or something like that. So this 경비 아저씨 or these 경비 아저씨 people, they're guard watchmen. And anyways, the place where they would sort of sit, or the place where they stand watch or sit watch over the apartment complex, that room would be called this room here, this 경비실. So these visiting vehicles, they're going to do something in this 경비실, this guard room, or this, I guess protecting wouldn't be the best word, but guard room is probably a better way to say that. Now, this word 경유, I want to talk about this. This is the verb here, 경유하다, refers to stopping in at a place and then continuing going somewhere else. You would most commonly see this when you're stopping over. I'll write this over. Stopping over on a trip, sort of like on a plane, as if you're doing sort of like a layover on a plane. Layover. For example, as I said, I'm Canadian, and if I ever want to travel somewhere, let's say I want to travel maybe to Halifax or something like that, and I say, if I want to get to Halifax, I have to stop over in Toronto, because you can never just fly directly from Seoul to Halifax, but you'd always have to go, I gotta lay over in Toronto, then I can go to Halifax. So what you'd have to say is, 토론토를 경유해서, and then you'd say Halifax something, then I went to Halifax or something like that. But basically what this is saying here is, I had a layover in Toronto, and then you can finish the sentence any way you'd want to say it. So for example, I could say 토론토를 경유해서 헬리팩스 갔어요, or something like that, to say I stopped over in Toronto and then I went to Halifax. So what this whole line here is saying is, okay, well, the visiting vehicles, they should stop over or check in at the guard room, or whatever you want to call it, wherever these 경비 아저씨 people are hanging out. Now, this line here, this way, that's actually the 100% complete opposite of this ne here. So the Hanja character for this, and you've seen this in a previous sign video, looks something like this. And this refers to outside. If ne refers to the inside, well, this must refer to the outside. And bu here, well, it means division, or sort of section, division, or section, or side, or something like that. And you've never seen this in a Hanja video before, but I do have this in my Hanja lessons somewhere. And the Hanja character is relatively simple, so I might as well show it to you. It looks like this. I always have trouble doing this side of it. It looks sort of something like that. And if you think about this weibu, basically what this is saying is, well, if you look at this, 차량, that's the vehicles again. I've already told you that means vehicles. And if you say 외부 차량, that's referring to vehicles that came from the outside, or that came from, not vehicles that are registered, or not vehicles of people that live at this apartment complex, but vehicles of people that are from the outside of this apartment complex. And obviously that's just, friends or family or anybody who's coming to the apartment complex that's not living there. And finally down here, this is something that I think I definitely, this kunzi down here, you've seen this in a lot of sign videos. This is basically telling somebody to not do the whatever noun form of a verb is before it. And this here is juta, which means, the verb form of juta is jutahada, which means to park. But this is just juta, it means parking. So if I look at this whole line here, it's saying that the vehicles from the outside of this apartment complex, they're not allowed to park in the apartment complex. And again, if I go through this whole sign, it's saying, okay, well, first things first, drive slowly or go slowly inside the apartment complex. Any visiting vehicles, they should check in at the guard tower, the guard room first. And then any outside vehicles can't park here. Well, that was fun. I hope you learned a lot. Like our sign videos, you can see all of our Korean sign explanation videos by clicking the link here. We also have a ton of videos showing various aspects of Korean culture, tourist areas, cuisine, and everyday life. You can go there by clicking this link here. You can also subscribe to our channel by clicking this button.